Hi, I'm Anthony Pacini back at Veggies, out in the garden again this weekend, doing a lot of gardening, trying to retire a lot of my summer veggies that are still hanging on. Now it's getting a bit cold, it's time to move them on. Also got a lot of seedlings that I need to continue planting, and that succession planting that I had been doing over the last few months. But before I get onto those, I'm going to be harvesting one of my first crops of celery for the season. Now, I'm actually quite proud of the crop that I've produced at the moment. I have tried to grow celery unsuccessfully in the past. It just came out too stringy and too bitter. Just to show you what my celery crop looks like, I've got my single row of planting here in my main bed, and this is planted as seedlings in early February, and I planted these as from store-bought punnet of seedlings. So I'm not sure what the variety is, but they seem to be looking absolutely amazing. You can just see, if I just bring you in closer, you can just see they've got a nice good stand of stalks there, quite thick and vigorous. The issue I'm having at the moment is that they're starting to be crowded out by the cauliflowers and the silver beet adjacent, so I need to start moving them on. I'm going to be harvesting probably two today, one for my family and one for my parents. I'm going to try to clear most of these at the end in about 2 weeks time, because I really want to get this space opened up. So I'm going to go and harvest probably two of the larger ones. I'm looking at this plant here just to give them a bit more space, and possibly this plant over here. So coming over to the first plant, I'm just going to drop the knife just below the root ball. Now you can pick and come back to these plants, but in my case I'm going to be harvesting them whole. Yeah, that's my first one. It was actually a lot longer. It looks a lot longer than what it is in the ground, and the stems are quite nice, not overly thick, which is great, but looking really good. Over at my second. Beautiful, really nice stalk. The stalks are actually quite heavy. It's going to start breaking on me. There you go. That's a beautiful large celery. Now, I found the secret for me to growing these celeries to this size was a lot of fertilizer. Earlier on, I applied 2 rounds of sulfate of ammonia at about 4 weeks apart as the seedlings were growing, and I found that actually celery does need a lot of that nitrogen burst, and to be able to put on the big stems and the fast growth, to really get away from that, you know, the stringiness that you get. And heaps of water. I've got these on irrigation, and they were being watered every day for 15-20 minutes. So they're looking, so they produced well. If you don't want to use sulfate of ammonia, you want to go for a more natural route, I'll try to use a lot of chicken manure pellets, a lot of blood and bone, stuff like that, but in my context it worked well. Just finished that harvest, and those are my 2 celeries. I'm pretty impressed with how these performed, considering they're not commercial grade seeds. And if I bring it closer to the larger of the 2, you can just see the huge stalks in the middle. It's beautiful. I'm really happy with how these produced, and I'm actually going to try to continue planting more celery throughout the season. I want to continue planting corn in my patch all the way through winter, so I'm going to start raising a few of my own seedlings, and I've been looking at a few commercial varieties which I'm going to try and see how they perform in my patch. The first one I'm going to be growing is Mambo, and I'm going to be trying another variety called Green Giant. Now, I haven't grown either of these 2 before, but I'm hoping that they'll produce something similar to what you'd buy in the shops. But I'll give them a go and see, and I'll let you know how they perform. I'm going to start seedlings today and looking at planting them out in about 4 to 5 weeks time, so in the middle of June. It may be a little bit too cold for them then, but we'll see how they perform. Moving along from my celery patch, I'm going to come over to another part of my main bed, this time over at my capsicums. It's time to say goodbye to this planting. It's actually been getting quite cool here in Sydney over the last few days after the big rains we've had, and I'm not going to get any more flowers on these plants, so I'm going to clear this crop, and I'm going to be planting a lot more Asian greens and brassicas. I've got in the order of about 1 meter wide garden bed here, so I'm going to be able to get a few rows of plantings But this crop, just as a side note, this crop's been really good. Been really happy with how my capsicums perform. This variety is Agostini, and I've got on some new seeds for next year's planting. But I'm going to be saying goodbye to this crop. I'm going to collect whatever fruit I can, and the rest of it will go to the chickens, and they'll make a full meal out of this. So there still are a few flowers, showing, but I'm not expecting great things out of them. So time to say goodbye. Clear the bed, just fix up the slope of the land, give it a bit of a turnover, and add some compost, and I'll come through and start planting my seedlings. Just finished preparing that bed, and I've decided I'm going to plant 2 rows of Chinese broccoli Kailan in this location. I've taken it about 50 centimeters away from the broad beans, and that's okay having them that close, because the Kailan will be pulled out long before the broad beans get any larger. I'm also going to be looking at planting a row of green feast shelling peas just here on the edge here, just to take up that space. And I'm expecting by the time the peas will cause any shadowing over the rest of the bed, again that Chinese broccoli will be harvested. As for my seedlings, these are it. I've got something close to 32 seedlings, actually, yeah, 32 seedlings. Looking quite good. I'm going to try to separate these as much as I can and plant out, if I can, plant out the whole lot. They do need a bit of water, but by the time I get them in the ground, I should be able to water them up, and they should spruce right up. Going to be spacing them about 20 centimeters. I'm actually going to try to grow them a bit closer this time. I've been giving them 40 centimeters, but it just don't need the space. And with the compost I just added to it, and I added a little bit of blood and bone as well to the bed, there should be enough fertilizer and nutrients in the soil to really get them going. So 20 centimeters, trying to get the whole 5 punnets in the ground. So I'll show you how it looks like once I've planted them all out. Two rows planted out now, giving them a bit of water. They look okay, but they will settle in. It's just they get a little bit of shock as they are transplanted, but you'll see over the next few days they will bounce right back. And it's probably about 30-35 plants in this spot. And the good thing about these plants, I find they're quite fast growing, and you can harvest them down to the stem, to the bottom of the stem, and they will resprout. So you'll get 2 or 3 harvests out of them, and then I'll just move them on. And I'll be expecting these to be ready to harvest, especially in this sunny spot, in about 6 weeks time. So it's a nice quick crop that I can get in, and then once the broad beans get large enough, they'll just take over this space here. Over on this side now, I'm going to be planting my green feast beans, and I'll show you my seeds. I've actually had them pre-soaked for a few hours. These are my pea seeds that I've been soaking in the water for the last few hours, and they're ready to go. And I like to do this to get them started on that germination process. I don't, especially now that there's a lot of rain coming in over the next few weeks, I don't want the seeds to rot in the ground. So I'm going to be planting them pre-soaked and not add any more water to them, because I do run the risk of them rotting in the ground. So what I've been doing is just running my rake, just forming a little trough just across the bed here, and then I'll just drop the seeds in. In planting these seeds, I'm just going to lightly sprinkle the seeds along the trench. I'm not going to be too fast about spacings. Normally at that 5 to 10 centimeter spacings. Just want to, the idea is I want to use the whole packet. I'm not going to save any seeds. My row here is probably 2.5 meters, 3 meters long, and so I should be able to get most of the seeds planted out at some decent spacings. And then just covering up the trench, just bringing the soil gently over the seeds. Just gently, just bring it over. Just a little bit of the dirt around the side, and then lightly packing it down with my hand, and that's planted. And although they don't need much water at the moment because they've been pre-soaked, I'm just going to give them a little watering can's worth of water just to firm that soil around the seeds, just to help them with germination. This afternoon I'm going to be working on my leafy greens patch, and what I'll be doing today is planting out this season's rocket patch. Now every year I plant out a big patch of rocket, and we use it as salads, in salads and in dishes throughout the season. And what I'm looking at doing is forming my new patch just in this area here. This bed here is when I had my other planting of zucchinis, and I'd planted some radishes over this side, and they're actually looking quite good, just starting to bulb up. The variety is called Crimson Globe. Really good variety, really well, great producer. I find it produces a lot of nice size radishes in about 4 to 6 weeks, which is great. Going to be planting coriander in this section, coriander and potentially some baby spinach, but over in this corner is going to be my rocket patch. And what I'm going to be doing is just using my rake, I'm going to be forming up the patch in the soil and then planting out my rocket seeds in rows. The rocket variety I'm be planting is not the wild rocket, but the broadleaf rocket. I've had these seeds for about 3 years, got these from Seed Collection, and I've been using these, and it's still quite good germination last season, so I'm hoping I can still get this of germination in my patch now. I've prepared the bed, and I dug it over and fined up the soil, and I added a little bit of my homemade compost and a little bit of blood and bone in this patch, just to add a lot more nitrogen for the seedlings to grow in. When I come to plant my seeds, I try to plant them thinly in the holes. I'm going to come back and thin out these seeds, and I don't want to over plant the rows. Just a matter of just coming through each of the rows and just slightly drop a few seeds in each of the trenches. And once seeds are planted, it's just a matter of just gently moving back that soil atop of the seeds, just gently. And what I like to do is gently just pat the soil down, just to firm up the soil around that seeds. Just moving that soil again, just gently across that trench, and then gently patting the soil down. And once I've planted out that bed, I add essentially a cotton cloth over the bed before I water it in. And the idea is that the cloth will slow down that water to a real soak, and so it's not dislodging the seeds as I'm watering. And just keeping it on here, just gently watering, applying the water to the patch and making sure that the whole sheet is soaked, to make sure that the water covers every bit of that patch. Now I've applied that water until the whole bed's soaked, and if you could just pull back you can just see that the whole bed is quite soaked. I let it sit here for next couple of days. It does two things. The sheet does protect the seeds from the birds and from the ants who tend to come through and eat all the seeds in this bed, but also keep the dampness on the soil so that those seeds germinate. I will water on this sheet every day for the next 4 days, but keeping an eye on when they germinate. Rocket seeds tend to take about 5 days to germinate, so as soon as they germinate, that sheet comes off and then we're good to go. It's been 10 days since I planted out the rocket, and they've all germinated. Look at the germination. You can see the rows. The germination hasn't been that great. I find that the seeds might have been just a little tad old, but I've got nice coverage in these first 3 rows. These last 2 rows, I might come back and just replant this section here. Good thing about planting them out at that distance is as these chickweed seedlings come through, I can just run my wire weeder between the plants and knock out a lot of those weeds and so they don't take over the patch. I'm going to try to replant them tomorrow. It's probably getting a bit too dark now to do that, and hopefully I'll get them to germinate properly. And look, I'm hoping that, look, these are on track to producing in about 6 to 8 weeks time. So yeah, but I'm happy they've germinated. And while I'm here, I just want to show you what else I've done during the week. And on this side here, I planted coriander, erased coriander seedlings in a punnet, and I was going to give them a go to see if I could transplant them, and they seem to have taken on. These were transplanted about 5 days ago. I had my cat come in here and dig it up, so you see there's a bit of a gaping hole there in the planting, but generally speaking everything else is looking really good. Again, gonna have to come through and remove a lot of these weeds, but I find that coriander can be transplanted quite easily, and I might, in my next few videos, might show you how I'm transplanting my second planting of coriander. And before I wrap up this video, just a quick update on my broad beans that I planted last week. They've all germinated now, full germination. This is the main bed where I get the most sun. This is my main bed, but even then you're finding that the plants are leaning a bit across to the right, just chasing the sun. I don't know, hopefully they will correct themselves as the days get, as they get more sun. At the moment, got to put the irrigation on them as well, and I'm going to give them, this early stage, I'm going to give them an initial feed of liquid fertilizer just to really get them going. And finally, a quick update on my Brussels sprouts. Last few weeks really shot along. They did have a slight aphids infestation. You'll find that they will slow down. I got that cleared up. That yellow in there is from aphids, but once you get rid of the aphids, the plants just double in size. So these are ready for more fertilizer, and they will need to get, I'll be using sulfate of ammonia on these plants. My go-to for these long season brassicas. What I'll do is I'll put a trench straight down the middle and apply the fertilizer and then let it water in, and these should respond. Thanks a lot everyone for joining me in this video. I really appreciate your support. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment in this video or reach out to me on my socials on TikTok or Instagram. Thank you, and I hope to see you in the next one.